anyone got a particular question for everybody, or perhaps for one particular? Can you see them, by the way? We might have come closer to the fire. They are here, I promise you, just to remind you, if you haven't had a chance to look. Here, Queen Matilda is still over here.
Woo.
That's it. Very good, Queen Matilda. And over here, Mr. George Chafin, the MP, with a liking for firearms and horses. And Mrs. Gulliver over here. There we are, the smuggler's wife. And over here, Mrs. Maria Ridout, who told you. I think she might be the favourite there. And of course, there is myself. Thank you so much, sir. Yes, it's some of my workers over there I brought along. Now, who has a question you would like to ask first of all? And we will find you, and you can ask your questions.
Mr. Pitt-Rivers?
There's so much smoke I can hardly see. But over there, yes, madam. Would you mind standing up so we can see you? Yes. Who is your question for?
I want to ask you.
Oh,
I
yes.
have read that Howard Carter knew you.
You've read that Howard Carter knew me?
Yes.
Well, there you go.
What was he like?
Howard Carter, very young. Yeah, very young. Yes, he was quite impressed by what I'd done, actually. I'm glad you mentioned that. He was quite impressed because he went on and did a few things here and there. Quite successful, I've heard. But anyway, yes, I won't say I taught him everything he knew, but you know. Yes. Next question. Anyone over this side?
I have a question.
Yes, sir. And you're on your feet. I like it.
I am indeed, sir. And I wish to address it to our Honourable MP, the most estimable George Chafin MP.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. That's
An
kind of you.
honourable man who tells us he receives no reward for being our Member of Parliament.
That's right.
And yet, sir, he tells us he's in charge of all hunting and permits. He's the main ranger. I have it on good authority that an application to hunt something somewhere somehow can be more favourably looked upon if it comes with a gift.
A gift? And the gentleman was
What are you?
Nose, if you did not notice.
Don't
Just a
point
minute,
at me.
Mr. Chafin. Mr. Chafin. Mr. Chafin. Just a minute. Let the gentleman have his question. So, are you happy to answer that question, Mr. Chafin?
Happy? Am I not? Happy? Oh, yeah, delighted. Sir, where is your evidence? I challenge anyone to find any evidence against me.
You never got a penny.
Mere rumours, sir, mere rumours, gossip. Evidence is what I'm asking. Oh, yeah, I thought he was going to be kind to me.
I think you'd better be careful, sir, Mr. Chafin. I don't believe he's brought his... He hasn't brought his gun with him, fortunately. Right, very good. Well, that's a very interesting question. Right, a question over here. Yes, sir.
A question for you, sir.
Right.
Could you explain a little bit more about scientific archaeology? What were some of the clever things that you brought forward?
Well, the cleverest thing I brought forward, I think, was this idea that you do not just value the gold and the silver, but that everything is important. Ethnologically, it's important and must be properly catalogued. Now, everything I had to be labelled. There was a code. It was written down by my assistant, who also did superb diagrams. I've got some of them here, but it's so dark you wouldn't be able to see them, so there's not much point. I have remembered my suitcase, but you wouldn't see them. But anyway, everything was mapped. Models were made. That was the other thing. And the point about this was that future generations could come and see what we had done in our way and improve them, build on what we had done. Now, for me, that was scientific. It had not been done before. Archaeology wasn't considered a serious subject before my time. Not really. It was linked to ethnology, perhaps a little bit, but I believe that that's perhaps maybe what I achieved. Anyway, enough of me. I've had two questions. Who has a question for one of our other guests and contestants here tonight? You've asked a question already, so I think I'm going to stop you. Who are you gunning for next?
I'd like to ask a question of our most esteemed Queen.
Oh, the Queen, yes.
Of
Well, take your hat off then, sir. And then Your Majesty, there is a question from a gentleman over
You
here.
say that because you have hair.
Well, I don't know what to say to that, sir, but why not ask a question? There's a-
Our Queen is a local Saxon who married William. I wonder if she agrees with me that there is no greater benefit you can bring to a country than stable, strong rule, justice, courts, the skills that you and William brought to the country, as we can see in the building at Old Sarum. You bring much to our chase, madam.
Well,
I think you got off lightly, madam. However, what do you have to say?
well, it's very kind of you to offer such a good impression of us. I would hasten to add, though I have Saxon blood, but I also have French and Flemish blood in me. I come with a whole mix and range of experiences. But you are right. You are right. We brought strong administration, which we made sure was adopted with force sometimes. It was sometimes necessary to repress rebellion, but justice. We were carrying on a tradition of administration that had been created by our Saxon predecessors. We didn't create completely new changes, but we brought in new laws, we brought in new relationships between the tenants-in-chief, between the king, and also our relationship to our monastic traditions, which we did change. We brought many of the monasteries under the Benedictine rule, where before the majority of churches in this country were local churches, local saints. But we also saw a great proliferation of nunneries, of places of God for women. Now, as I said earlier, I thought education was very important for me. I made sure my daughters, and I didn't mention it before, but I had 10 children in my life together with William. And I'll just have you note that William had no children outside our marriage. He was loyal to me. Quite unusual for a king, you will find. But all my 6 daughters, I made sure they were well educated. And they went on to be abbesses and countesses, and they made their own mark. So yes, discipline, determination, focus. Those are traits which we have lived our life all under the grace of God. And in that matter, we have been great patrons.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Very good reply. Thank you. Now, sir, is your question for Mrs. Ridout or for Mrs. Gulliver? Because it's time to ask them some things. Yes.
Well, my question actually addresses each one of you, if that's
Ah.
possible.
Yes, Bill.
I'd just like to know,
Far away, sir.
in terms of your own legacies, what one thing would you hope for the future of this area after your deaths?
Very interesting question. What one legacy would you hope for the future after your deaths? Mrs. Gulliver, would you like to answer that one first?
I think my legacy and my answer may be quite simple. I would hope that the ordinary folk of the chase, in all of their occupations and skills and trades, would be able to earn an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. And I hope that through good and honest trade, because we never stole a thing, my husband and I, we were honest traders, that through that buildings can and buildings and structures in the town can survive. My children, my daughters, they have contributed a lot to Wimborne, to its very fine houses, and also to the banks and the money systems. And so it goes on.
Thank you, Mrs. Gulliver. Well, there you are. That's our first answer. That's her legacy then. Banks and money. Very good. Mrs. Ridout.
Oh, well,
What was your legacy, would you
I've been
say?
thinking about this, and I hope that, what with all the future and the machineries that I saw with my own eyes appear on the landscapes, and the speed with which things can be made, and trains coming and going, and things getting so fast, that I do hope that in the future people will slow down and be aware of the beautiful place that is the Chase, and all of nature that is around to bring joy, and also that there is kindness to one another. For I do believe it could easily be forgotten with such speed of a future that I can't imagine.
Well, you have shown us a very good example of kindness. Now, Mr. Chafin, sir, what is your legacy, do you think, that you'd like to leave to the Chase?
Well, I would like to be regarded as a good man. I mean, I seem to have received some sort of hostility here.
Maybe fear, sir.
Was that?
It may just be fear.
Yes, fear.
So they lie
I
to
have
you.
served for 40 years this Dorset, and those of you may know that I had Chettle House built. A fine building indeed. And I hope that will remain there. I employed a fine architect, Mr. Archer, Thomas Archer, a very fine architect. And I hope that also will stay in your minds. And I did serve Dorset to the best of my ability. In fact, the rector of the local church said, "Do you know, one day, sir, I think there will be a plaque on the wall dedicated to you." The Chettle Church.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chafin. Very good response. Yes. Well, my own now I've had my heart broken by being told that the museum in Farnham has been turned into a public house, which would suit you, Mrs. Gulliver, I'm quite sure, and perhaps Mrs. Ridout as well. But I do hope that the Llama tree will continue to be a legacy, as I set it up, and I do hope that will go on in perpetuity, and this idea of having activities for the people of the Chase to take part in. And of course, archaeology must continue, properly supervised and scientifically researched. So there you are. That was a very interesting question. Has anyone got a question specifically for Mrs. Gulliver or Mrs. Ridout before we move to our...
May I speak of my legacies?
Oh, have you not spoken of
No,
your
I
legacy?
I am not used to being ignored.
Oh, sorry. Oh, goodness me. Do speak. I will sit down quickly. Be quiet. I'm so sorry, Your Majesty.
So I might call on the services of this man with his musket.
Oh, no.
With pleasure, madam.
I spoke earlier about the coronation and how important it was for me, but what I didn't say was when I was being crowned, I was carrying my fourth child, my fourth son. And a few months later, I gave birth to him. Not in the Cranborne Chase, but in Selby. Well, I think William wanted me to get to York just to establish our connection to York, but we made it as far as Selby, and I gave birth to him, my only son, born on English soil. His name, Henry. And at the moment he is being schooled at Saresbury, the hill upon the hill, by Bishop Osmond. I have great hopes for him. And my legacy, I hope one day, that he will be king. Perhaps he will be King Henry, first of his name.
Well, thank you so much. My profound apologies again, madam, for my mishap. Now, is there a specific question for Mrs. Ridout or for Mrs. Gulliver? And after that, we will move to the vote. Yes, madam, at the back, yes.
I was very interested that the two men in our company this evening, both for whatever reason they might have had, didn't mention any women in their lives, and the 3 women all mentioned the men in theirs, which was quite interesting. And I wondered whether the women would like to speak about what they feel was the most important thing that they achieved in their lives as women in their own right.
Well, that's a very interesting question. Yes, I'm very sorry I didn't mention my dear wife Alice, but never mind.
Mine Elizabeth, my wife, yes.
However,
11
they are mentioned. We haven't forgotten them. Now, so, who would like to start? Queen Matilda, would you like to begin?
I will be brief.
Thank you.
Obviously, I was blessed with a prosperous womb. For that, I am forever grateful to God. But the thing I'm most proud of is the founding of my abbey, Caen, Saint Trinité. And I gave great patronage to it over the years. I gifted it with many land support to make sure that it would be a success after I'd gone. And one of the strong signs we gave before 1066 was that we gifted our 7-year-old Cecilia to the abbey for a life of prayer. That was our gift, that was our sacrifice. And she has gone on to become the 2nd abbess. And I have left that abbey in her trusted hands and seen it flourish. And I have been able to gift lands and money to that place in my own autonomy, in my own authority. To be given that amount of independence came from a good marriage, but I am proud of the work that I have done for that abbey myself.
Thank you, Majesty. Very good. Mrs. Ridout.
Well, I don't feel that I should speak ill of my husband, although I was his 3rd wife. And he was much older than I. And of course I am grateful for he taught me how to read and write. But should things have been different, would I have needed to have married him? Could my life have been any different? I looked after my mother as one does when she became old, and Robert looked after his. We had that in common. I knows many who suffered under a stern husband's hand. And perhaps things will change in the future, and the word of the wife will be heard and listened upon, and in the powers that be, to hear the plight of a woman looking after children or needing help at any time. We did it amongst ourselves. If someone needed help with the birth of their child, there was someone to call upon. Or if someone died within the family, then, well, within the village, there would be someone who could help the grieving of a family. I think women do a lot of the work in keeping things together, and perhaps in the future that will be more well known. I don't know.
What do you have to say on this matter?
I may not have been the name on everybody's lips. I may not have been the figurehead, the person, the infamous person that everybody had heard about across Cranborne Chase. But I know that I steered the ship and that I kept it steady, and that it took both of our brains and both of our cunning and courage to create what we created. It helped ourselves, our family, but it helped many others too. And my brains and canniness and courage were seen in every small detail of our lives. Whether it was recognised by others or not, we knew that it was there. Myself, I stood up to the revenue men one day when they came to our house, and I stood over a bottle of brandy, barrel of brandy, hiding it from their very view with my petticoats, while my husband was hiding away. And I lied to them. barefaced lies, and they believed me. That is the metal that I have.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. Time calls. It has been a lengthy evening, and time calls us. It is time for you to perhaps talk to the person next to you and make your choice. Who of us five should most be remembered in the future of Cranborne Chase? And choose one. Or make a comment about it, but have a little chat about it. We give you 1 minute and some music to help you decide. And we will have our vote. The minute is up, ladies and gentlemen. And so now, let us go around, and a show of hands should do it. And Mrs. Lynn, would you do the counting, please, for it? I'm sure you'll do a much better job than me. Very well, let us start, please. If you think Queen Matilda should be our millennial figure of the chase, please raise your hands now for Queen Matilda. Let me over here. Very good. Yes?
I think that's 8.
8, very good start. Thank you.
I can't see you.
Very good. And next, moving on. What about Mr. Chafin MP? Who is going to vote for him?
Yes. I'll put myself in a gibbet now. Oh, thank you, man.
He was very popular with the young people this afternoon who came. They were impressed by his firearm. Very good. Well, moving swiftly on, Mrs. Gulliver. Who is to vote for her as our... Oh, there we are. Look, all over the wooden O here.
About 13 or 14.
Oh, look at that. Things are changing fast all the time. And now, Mrs. Ridout. Who is going to vote for Mrs. Ridout? Oh, very popular choice. Look at this. Look at this. Oh, goodness me. Well, and I must sit down for this because now I am the final choice, and I'm sure I will meet Mr. Chafin there. So, but if you do want to vote for me, put your hand up. Now, there we are. There we are.
What about Mrs. Gulliver? Come on.
Mrs. Gulliver?
They have counted.
We have counted Mrs. Gulliver. I haven't been so forgetful. I didn't forget the Queen.
She's a crook.
Don't worry, Mr. Tiff, she was not the winner. Mrs. Ridout is the winner.
She got right.
If we had more time, we would be interested to know what was behind your choices. However, our time is up, and it is time for us to depart this wooden O, to quote the bard rather badly, and we will then retreat from this magical space. We thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your rapt attention and interest.